Here's Johnny. I'll be back.
And you will know my name is the Lord. I'm walking here.
I'm sorry, Dave. I'm afraid I can't do that.
Groovy.
Previously on X-Men.
Yeah, MB, recap the entire X-Men franchise.
It began in 1963.
No, the movie franchise.
It began in 1998 when Bryan Singer was hired on to do the Fox Studios production of the Marvel Comics property X-Men. I can't keep going with that.
You have like a slight Stan Lee vibe to you. Listen, true believers. Anyway, this is Box Office Pulp, the podcast of the movies, madness, and Moxie. And the movie we'll be talking about this evening.
That's a lot of Moxie.
Yeah, tons. It is X-Men Days of Future Past.
What's the last thing you remember? I had a glimpse into the past. You're going to have to do for me what I once did for you.
So, I wake up in my younger body, and then what?
Find me. Convince me of all of this. It's going to take the two of us.
And where do I find you?
A different path. A darker path. Logan, I was a very different man. Lead me. Guide me. Be patient with me.
Patience isn't my strongest suit.
I don't want your suffering. I don't want your future.
Please. We need you to hope again.
Based, of course, loosely on the classic comic book story, Days of Future Past.
Loosely, but perhaps better for it?
Well, we didn't really see the fastball special turning into Wolverine getting destroyed by a Sentinel.
Look, some things just can't be done, I'm sorry.
I really wanted to see future Wolverine in his yellow and blue costume fighting a Sentinel. Alas. So, X-Men Days of Future Past.
Yes, the sequel to X-Men, X-Men 2, X-Men United, X-Men 3, The Last Stand, X-Men Origins Wolverine, X-Men First Class, and the Wolverine, I guess.
Technically, yeah.
Yeah, there's a setup for it at the end of that movie. There's not really much of a reference to it in this one, but it is.
You see some flashes from it.
I didn't make them out. There was a lot of flashes in this movie.
You know what didn't get any flashes? X-Men Origins Wolverine, which we will get into later. I'm fascinated by this.
Yeah. But yeah, it's basically, this is a sequel to all of those movies. Primarily X-Men 3, X2, and mostly X-Men First Class. It's essentially the sequel to the X-Men franchise in general. It doesn't really have a specific movie that it hones in on. It just it's X-Men 4 and X-Men First Class 2 rolled into one.
Yeah.
Which is something that you would think would be a lot more convoluted than it actually is. The way they kind of do it is really just, it's something to behold, because it kind of weaves in continuity like a thread almost. Like everything builds on what happened before and everything extends to that. And it's just kind of the way it was cohesive and concise and just on point, like laser tuned almost to everything that happened before. Almost like a real comic book arc.
Yeah, I was mesmerized just because it really shouldn't work. Like I wasn't expecting them to go so full on with the continuity of it.
Yeah.
And actually making it work somehow really took me aback because it shouldn't. It's for everything going on in that movie. Everything going on in that movie, it shouldn't work at all. And then you add in the continuity of the X-Men films, and
I have to say, like, that was kind of something that I felt going in, was that once the opening credits started and you had that scene of them in the future, I thought, okay, already I'm kind of seeing a problem with this movie. I don't know how they're going to get past it. And then they get past it, which was the problem of everything's happening too fast. But that was just an opening. Like, the action is so quickly intercut and so balanced in the movie that it's just kind of, it's amazing to believe, because there's a ton of action, but it's just kind of peppered throughout rather than being like, here's the big action spectacle until the end, really, when Magneto has the Sentinels.
Nothing feels like a set piece.
Yeah. It's just all kind of weaved in throughout the story, and the story itself is very much dramatic and kind of dealing with these heavier character moments. And every time an action piece happens, it's like, it's just, I would say everything in this movie feels organic.
Yeah, I mean,
to a degree I wouldn't have thought, because when Bryan Singer was talking about this movie, he talked a lot about erasing mistakes of the past and kind of going over some of the lesser liked entries of the franchise and kind of righting wrongs, and basically all but saying, yeah, we're going to erase X-Men Origins Wolverine and X3, and even the producer came out and said that, and it was just kind of a foregone conclusion that this movie would just kind of ignore those movies. I didn't think they would take them and actively make them still a part of the continuity, but not anymore. It was, how they did it was less like a movie and more like a comic book. In the best possible way.
It was like kind of a send-off for the franchise, but while I don't want to say restarting the franchise, but
no,
it livened up.
It set it back on a course, I think.
Yeah, it put it back on a good track.
Because First Class could have easily been said to, like, it wouldn't have taken much for a sequel to just kind of disregard the rest of continuity and just kind of go its own way. Instead, now it's set up to where it's clearly going to be the X-Men continuity, but it can still go its own way. It's very complex, but it's simple at the same time.
Like X-Men comics.
Some areas of the X-Men comics, let's just say that. But
anything before the 90s, we'll say that.
Yeah. That's mainly what I was talking about. God. Thank God Cable did not make it into this movie, because they were talking about that. Kinberg was actually talking about the fact that Cable was going to be in it for a couple of the early drafts.
Yeah, I was fascinated as I was just listening to the Empire podcast interview with Kinberg earlier, and talking about how Wolverine being the one who goes back in time didn't occur to them for a while, and Bishop was originally going to go back, and then Cable was going to go back. Cable was going to be in this movie at some point.
And what gets me about that is that Wolverine is the one, like, people have complained many times about Wolverine taking the spotlight, and sometimes that's valid, sometimes it's not.
I would say I was a little like, yeah, of course Wolverine's the one that goes back in time in the movies, kind of.
But then it's like, for this story specifically, it is always, like, the minute they said, well, the reason they're doing it is because Wolverine is ageless. Like, the minute they said that, I was like, oh, well, yeah. That actually does make sense.
It makes perfect sense. You couldn't have Shadowcat go back in time because she wasn't born yet.
Yeah, in this continuity, she wasn't in the 70s, so it's like they would have had to completely retcon that to make that work, and it just wouldn't have. Plus, I don't think it would have really worked in that we don't really know Shadowcat in the movies yet.
No, you need a character you've been with. I need a character who's had a relationship with Professor Xavier to be able to then go back and, help Professor Xavier in the past.
Plus, if you do it with, like, Magneto, for instance, that would have taken away everything about Fassbender, because he would have been trying to be playing good Magneto throughout the entire movie, and we just had a movie with him trying to be good and sliding towards evil.
And you couldn't do it with Beast either, because then that takes away from any development with young Beast.
Yeah.
So Wolverine's really the only way to go, because he's kind of the constant always Wolverine.
Yeah. But that's the thing, is that as much as Wolverine is the linchpin in this movie, he's actually really not that major.
No.
In terms of... Mystique is the big centerpiece of this movie, really. Mystique is kind of everyone rallies behind her actions because she's the one that's going to cause this future.
Yeah,
Xavier is the main character.
Yeah, Xavier's the main character, which I really wasn't expecting. But when you think back to First Class, and First Class being the Magneto movie,
yeah,
of course Days of Future Past would be the Xavier movie.
Yeah.
And Mystique is kind of a MacGuffin, but even more, Wolverine is almost kind of a MacGuffin. He's taken out of the third act.
Yeah.
He doesn't have an action scene. Like he has, when he first wakes up, he has one. He fights a Sentinel a little bit, but then he's removed from the final act.
Yeah, he doesn't even really, he gets a short fight scene during the prison break, and even then it's him, Magneto, and Xavier standing around while Quicksilver does everything.
Yeah, Wolverine is there as a guy.
Story piece.
Yeah, he's a story piece. He just kind of moves Charles along onto the path that Charles was going to be on.
And there's a definite difference between being a story piece and being the story.
Yeah.
And you can definitely tell where he was the story in the other movies and where he's the story piece. And in this one, he's full on that. This is probably the best use of Wolverine in the movie so far, apart from the Wolverine itself.
Yeah, and being able to use the character's history and the character's history as, on film as that is actually pretty fucking genius.
Yeah.
Because you don't have to explain anything. It's like, here's Wolverine, you've seen him interact with people, so you can just have him give speeches when necessary and do nothing when necessary.
Yeah. All you really need is that shot of him when he gets off the plane for the first time and he's lighting up a cigar. It's like that's
the coolest fucking thing ever.
It's like that's just it's all you need. Like that's the fan service you need to give to the Wolverine fans. And you have all these other films to watch him, get heavily involved.
Yeah, we just watched him fight ninjas.
Yeah.
I'm cool with just having him make quips and be helpful and guiding.
And speaking of returns, the first time Patrick Stewart and Ian McKellen came off of that plane for the first time since 2006.
I mean, I already lost my shit when Iceman slid into view.
Oh,
this fucking ice slide.
This movie took the idea of it being a reunion movie and ran with it because everyone has a part to play. Like, there are bit players, but most of them are just the new characters.
Yeah.
Like, everyone who you've seen before basically has a part to play except for Rogue for behind-the-scenes reasons.
Yeah.
And
I also love how there was no necessary wink to the camera with them.
Yeah.
It's like, no, these are these characters.
Yeah, well, they're just the X-Men. That's the thing that the movie gets right, is that for the first time, I think, since maybe the end of Last Stand, the X-Men feel like a team again.
Yeah, it just felt like these are the X-Men, so of course you know the X-Men. Isn't it awesome to see the X-Men again? Like,
you have Kitty doing her thing, you have Bobby doing his, you have Storm, having a huge set piece, you have Colossus going through a portal and slamming down, and even new characters like Blink. Blink is the most powerful X-Men in the movie.
Woo, I think we'll talk plenty about Blink because I'm obsessed with Blink's last stand in this movie. And Blink being just awesome.
And Warpath just stabbing things.
He was cool. And Bishop fucking being Bishop.
Okay, Bishop. Let's just get into that right now, because if we don't get it out of the way, we're going to be here all night. We got Bishop on screen.
Fucking with his 90s gun.
And his dreadlocks and his M tat. It's just Bishop.
I love seeing the M tattoos on the concentration camp mutants.
Yeah, that was actually one of the things I wanted to bring up, was that I was surprised that the prologue had any semblance of here's the other people that are in this future. Like, I was kind of shocked when it cut to other people and, like, it kind of showed a little bit of the world before they cut to the actual X-Men.
Yeah, I was shocked. I mean, it makes sense. I was shocked at the Holocaust imagery.
Yeah.
I was not expecting that. And, of course, it makes sense going back to how X-Men 1 opened. And, of course, that future is essentially supposed to be the Holocaust for mutants and humans as well. But how Singer just said fuck it and went with it. Like, the piles of bodies, and I was kind of blown away with how dystopian.
Them walking in a line with just chained up.
Yeah, I couldn't believe they went with it.
Well, that's the thing about this movie, is that it goes places that are really dark.
Yeah, it doesn't hold back.
No. The deaths in this movie, oh my god.
Because when you
there's some R stuff, like treading R stuff.
Oh, Jesus, Colossus being pulled in half.
I think, wasn't it, like, whose face was, like, burned off?
Warpath.
Warpath?
The Sentinel grabbed him and pulled his face into the beam, and you just hold on and him screaming and his fucking head's burned off. Like, Bobby has his head crushed in, like, twice.
Yeah, he's decapitated.
Sunspot was killed.
You see his, like, frozen head, like, flying across sliding across the ground.
Fucking Bishop exploded. His eyes flew towards the camera.
Even
like
in death, Bishop is still Bishop. Well, I think we should talk with Bishop about your favorite moment in fiction, in history, in cinema.
Storm's awesome set piece, where this was the first time I ever felt like Storm's powers were used like Storm. Like, she just looked like Storm, and she was firing lightning from her arms like she was Storm.
And Halle Berry had very few lines, so she was tolerable.
Exactly, so you could just project that she was Storm instead of whatever she's usually written as. And fucking firing lightning at Bishop, and he absorbs the energy and then starts blasting it back like he's in a fucking video game or something. It was the coolest fucking thing. This, like, about 5 minutes into this movie, I was, after the, horrifying prologue and everything before we meet the X-Men, even that part, it was just like I was watching an X-Men movie for the first time. I mean, I love X-Men 1 and I love X-Men 2 and First Class and the Wolverine and stuff. And even I don't necessarily despise X-Men 3. There's parts of X-Men 3 that I like. But this was the first time it felt like this is an X-Men movie.
Yeah.
Like
it was the 80s and 90s X-Men coming together for the first time on film. And those were the definitive eras for me. And I'm sure you too, because you grew up in the same era I did.
Yeah, I mean, and then when we get into the 70s, it just felt like I was reading a Claremont comic.
Like Wolverine wears the shades and the leather and, like, cowboy boots.
He just looks like fucking, like, John Byrne just drew him or something. I was just kind of blown away. Like, the fucking 10-year-old X-Men fan of me was just losing his shit, because it's just, the other movies were very serious.
Everything that caps it off is the X2 theme it returns.
Ottman scored X-Men 3 as well, I'm pretty sure. But it didn't have the X-Men theme in it. It was a very kind of generic superhero score.
Yeah.
But I was hoping when Singer was coming back, like, Singer was always like, he had the X-Men theme because he wanted to use flourishes from the vibe of the animated series theme. And that's what was in X-Men 1, but then really expand X-Men 2. And to hear that again, the very beginning, and as soon as it came in, it came over the Fox logo first. And I already started to, like, just kind of lose it. And then that fucking just completely kicked in. It was amazing to hear that again. It's been stuck in my head ever since.
And to see it with, like, the similar, like, opening crawl where it's just you're through, like, a cerebral cortex, and then it closes with the doors to Cerebro, just like X2, just like X-Men 1, just like I had watched X2 right before I went to see this. First time I'd seen X2 in maybe 5 years at least, and by the way, that movie still holds up, like, to an insane degree. But it was like being back in the early 2000s.
Yeah, definitely.
But then it just goes beyond. because you have Singer does it in a very impressive way where he directs the movie. He directs the future stuff a lot like he did with the first two films. Maybe a little bit more refined just because of the effects and stuff like that.
Yeah.
He directs the stuff in the past like it's a Matthew Vaughn film. Like,
yeah,
he has two completely different styles, and it's just bringing those two worlds together. Like, he has such attention to detail in this movie. It's weird.
Yeah, Singer's always had a very, like, he's all about the tiny little details. And this seems to be the first time he's really had the money and the time to just focus and hone in on the tiniest things and be able to just expand on everything.
Most expensive Fox movie ever made.
Considering, and it's hilarious to think that, how cheap X-Men 1 was and how Fox had no confidence in it and was constantly a fight with for everything, and then we come to this, the most comic booky X-Men movie so far. And I thought First Class was super comic booky, but...
Yeah, First Class, honestly, was my favorite of the entire franchise until I saw this movie. That's how good this movie was.
I'll be honest, when Singer was going to direct, I mean, I was excited to have Singer back as a director. But I was worried, like, oh, we're going to go back into that less comic booky vibe. Like, there is...
Yeah, because
X-Men 1 and 2...
1, 2, yeah, there's something very... I don't want to say Christopher Nolan-esque about them, but very dialed back and kind of morose.
Very serious sci-fi.
Yeah. Like, I think the most comic booky thing is just the fact that Nightcrawler is in one of the movies.
Yeah, definitely.
That's about it.
Definitely. But then I was just so shocked at how comic booky sci-fi Days of Future Past.
None of them wear strictly black costumes anymore.
Even in the future where everyone's pretty much wearing black because it's more of just like Mad Max kind of thing.
They still have flourishes of color. It's weird. Like, Iceman still has, like, his Grant Morrison type outfit.
Yeah, and Wolverine's wearing a yellow and blue outfit underneath.
For the first time.
Yeah, and like they're all wearing cool stuff. I mean, Magneto's just wearing his usual old Magneto outfit.
Well, what can you really do with Magneto? I mean,
yeah, but we get a Magneto comic book costume later on anyway, so it's okay.
I don't think McKellen should be made to wear that helmet again.
I was sad that he didn't rock the helmet in the future, but oh well.
Yeah, he's earned it.
Yeah, he's earned a reprieve. But then, like, Blink is, like, super comic booky looking. I mean, she just looks like Blink, first of all.
Yeah. Well,
and then
Sunspot's
Sunspot's wearing green.
Sunspot's pretty much just Human Torch at some point, and it works. Colossus is just Colossus. I mean, he never changes, but still, it's awesome to see him just mostly armored up through his screen time.
Yeah, with his giant shoulder pads, because he's fucking Colossus. They added his giant shoulder pads. And and there was no room in the past for anybody to don a costume other than Magneto, who goes out of his way to don a costume, because those are mutant clothes to him now.
Yeah.
Which I kind of love that. Goes back and gets his goddamn helmet.
And the scene, I think we're jumping ahead a little bit, but the scene where he makes his big supervillain speech.
Oh God, I was talking about this with you yesterday, which is between X-Men 3, we got terrorist Magneto. I mean, for all the badness of X-Men 3, we still got terrorist Magneto.
Even in X-Men 1, like where he was in the cave and announcing himself, like he was basically just an allegory for terrorism.
Yeah, but then here we get full-on supervillain Magneto, who picks up a stadium and carries it with him to prove a point.
And also, like, there's a scene of him on the train where he's putting in, like, metal into the Sentinels and just he plays it off later. Like, he has a whole big plan.
I was actually kind of shocked that Magneto separated from everybody so quickly in the movie. But, I mean,
it makes so much sense, too.
It makes so much sense. But I love how I wasn't expecting Magneto to be the villain of the movie.
No, neither did I.
I was expecting to carry on the First Class thing, but Magneto just was like, no, fuck it, I'm still doing whatever the fuck I want.
And he doesn't hesitate to try and kill Raven.
Oh, right away. It was awesome.
Like, as soon as they walk into the room, he basically just grabs a gun and tries to shoot her.
And once again, like the third act, Wolverine is immediately taken out of the situation.
Yeah.
And they did it in an awesome way.
Yeah, I did not expect them to use Stryker the way they did. I expected him to be like a cameo.
Yeah.
He's a lackey. He's actually Trash's bodyguard.
Yeah, I couldn't believe I thought he was just going to be in that one Vietnam scene and that was it.
Yeah.
And then seeing Brian Cox, and we actually got Brian Cox's Wolverine, which was amazing.
The flashbacks.
And the Weapon X flashbacks, of course, were from X-Men 1 and X-Men 2.
The way they should be.
I am kind of obsessed with the fact that this movie, I mean, it did retcon X-Men 3 and stuff like that, but even before the retcon started, it's pretending like X-Men Origins never happened. Because it didn't hit me till afterwards, while Days of Future Past is taking place, the Vietnam War is ending, the beginning of Origins took place in Vietnam during the ending of the Vietnam War. So that movie, when this movie starts, it already is out of continuity. It's already completely being ignored. Because Stryker should already be older and be running the Weapon X program. Wolverine should be in Nam.
Gambit should be places.
Victor should be there. So
that's the one part that did survive. He's just somewhere.
He's out there.
Side. Yeah.
He's out there. Jimmy. I did like how they kept in his name was Jimmy. They did have that reference in there. The when he woke up in bed with called him Jimmy, which is funny. They kept that, but then they were still like.
I love the fact that Wolverine in the past is just still a playboy. Like he just wakes up and he's sleep. Yeah, he's working for the mob. He sleeps with one of their daughters. Which
once again just felt like something out of the Claremont years. Yeah, Wolverine would have ties with the mob. But yeah, like I thought it was interesting that they constantly were like, Wolverine's about to do something. Nah, fuck it. Here's just Charles and Eric doing stuff.
Right until the very end, where you think he's going to be a part of this big battle, and then Magneto just completely throws him out.
That was all the brutality in this movie. That was just fucked up. The first thing that came to my mind when it started to happen, he started to put that rebarb into him, was the end of Fatal Attractions.
Yeah.
Where Magneto takes the adamantium out of Wolverine. And he
doesn't have adamantium in the movie because it's in the past, so he still has the bone claws.
Yeah.
But the imagery of it was very similar because it's just all that messed up, tendrils basically coming out of his skin.
Yeah, I mean, that was a really cool thing to reference, and they referenced it in a brutal way.
And then Magneto just being a complete dick and saying, "Who's the survival now?"
Throws him off.
Throws him across the Lincoln Memorial into the
Potomac
River.
Yeah. And the only thing I really didn't like, which was, I'm pretty sure Wolverine can drown.
Yeah.
But I guess maybe we can just accept that it takes him a long time to drown.
Yeah.
I'll accept it.
But,
God, that was brutal, though. They even had him do the Jesus pose.
Going back to the retcons, though, one of the best parts of the movie for me, it's not the fact that X-Men 3 was retconned, which it's like I don't really care either way. It's like I don't really consider that to be a good or bad thing because either way the movie's still going to exist in my mind. Yeah. So it's like
you retcon it, then it's like, well, we got robbed of Dark Phoenix.
Yeah, but with me, what I really love about it is the fact that it's retconned, yes, but now if you go back and watch X-Men 3 in a comic book way, it is the first in continuity Elseworlds story. That movie now, its flaws have been lessened because of that, because it's just leading up to a darker future that will eventually be solved in a future film.
That is interesting. It's kind of like how the Wolverine used Wolverine killing Jean to better itself.
Yeah, like it's like you go and watch X-Men: The Last Stand now, and instead of thinking during the scene where Cyclops dies, it's like, man, this is where Fox really messed up. That's the first step in a larger arc. And like when Wolverine kills Jean and all the stuff there, and like all the dumb stuff with like Xavier dying melodramatically and being ripped apart, even though he was just a dick earlier. Like all the stuff that people rag on about that movie, that technically can still all work now because it's just a part of a bigger story. Yeah. It's so strange how the movie had that immediate effect on it, but for me, it's just like now I could probably go back and watch that movie and appreciate it a lot more because it doesn't count. So it's the first step in a different story. Like it's the first step of the future X-Men continuity, because that future X-Men continuity is just the darker timeline. Like it's almost the Earth 2 of the X-Men timeline now. And
the interesting thing, I was thinking about this earlier, is if you don't like the idea of the retcon, which is understandable, not everybody likes retcons, and movie retcons are a little weird. This is like the first one of its kind. You could see that future scene, that end scene, as being Wolverine because Wolverine doesn't have his memory of what just happened, that a X-Men 4 happened that we just didn't see and Wolverine doesn't know about.
Yeah. And
that Jean's back with her Phoenix hair and her Phoenix outfit, and there's Scott, future Shades, Summers. Why'd they have to give him those weird glasses?
Yeah, that was the one thing that kind of, because, okay, you can attest to this. The one thing I kept saying over and over and over throughout the entire production of this was, man, if only Marsden was coming back. And you kept saying, well, never give up hope. Never give up hope.
It
could happen. And I kept doubting it, and I kept doubting it because I was like, it doesn't seem likely at this point, because like it seems like something. I think what my problem is that it seemed like something that would be addressed for the next movie, especially after Apocalypse was announced, because I figured that was when they were going to bring in Scott and Jean finally, and I figured, okay, Marsden's probably not going to show up. When that happened in the theater, I was like, oh, he's wearing those shades. Like it didn't completely deflate the moment because it was still amazing to see Scott and Jean back on screen.
Yeah,
but it was still like you couldn't have given them the glasses from the first movie or something.
It was weird. Like why the Back to the Future-esque future version of glasses?
Yeah, especially when all the others were fine. I mean, Grammer Beast was like. Kelsey Grammer as Beast came back.
Grammer as Beast, just walking through the frame. That was so. It was just awesome to see. Like, I mean, we got Daniel Cudmore as Colossus, Grammer back as Beast, James Marsden as Cyclops. Everybody's just brought back. There wasn't this feeling of like, oh, we got to go with the actors are expendable or something.
Yeah, and even though her role was very significantly cut down, and and you can tell throughout the movie because if you know about it, like behind the scenes, you kind of can tell. Okay, here's the scenes where this would have come in and all that. Even with all that said, I think the Rogue thing kind of works just because it's like, well, she's back, so it's kind of like the timeline reset.
Yeah, because I mean, with her cut out of the stuff, it just appears like she's dead.
Yeah.
And now it's like, oh, Rogue's back and Bobby's with her.
Yeah.
Fucking Kitty's with Colossus now.
Which I can't believe they did.
As it should be, god damn it. If I wrote an X-Men movie, it would just be Kitty and Peter just going on dates and having adventures.
And like, if they did another X-Men with the past, like with the
present, I guess, cast.
The present, the singer verse cast, I guess, is what you would call them at this point. Like, I could easily see that premise being taken to sequels and it just being Wolverine and the X-Men, essentially.
Yeah.
Like, they could just do it. They could just go for it and have X-Men stories taking place in the future if they wanted to. Yeah. I mean, they're clearly going to stick with the younger cast for Apocalypse, which I'm fine with. I want to see McAvoy leading the younger iterations of Cyclops and Jean and all of them.
Yeah. But Kaneberg keeps very non-committal in regards to, keeps saying a little bit more every time about, in regards to Apocalypse, the the old cast, we'll call them, not being done.
Yeah, which I'm
very curious. Yeah, because it's not like it can be another time travel story.
No. I hope it's not, because that would be kind of
very derivative. Yeah. I mean, yeah, Age of Apocalypse is always kind of a time travel story, but you just did Days of Future Past. You can't do that again.
Yeah.
But I can't tell you how like childlike happiness I had with that ending. Not just because to see like Grammer's Beast and James Marsden as Cyclops, but I got an X-Men feeling from it.
Yeah, it was a unification.
Yeah, it's like we're in the school. Professor X is there teaching a class. Jean Grey and Cyclops are there.
And also, did you notice like Wolverine wandering around, looking at everything like he did in the first movie?
Yeah,
when he was there for the first time.
Yeah, it was.
It was like full circle.
Yeah, it's like it's great that if none of the actors come back, it's great that there was a send off of some kind for it all.
Like apart from Jackman, I wouldn't mind if that were the last time we saw any of them. Like I don't mind. Really,
it would at least be appropriate.
Yeah, I mean thematically, it definitely works. I don't know. It's just kind of I feel right with the idea of them being sent off, and they'd really have to work at it to bring them back for a good reason, unless they just did an X-Men 4.
Which is possible. I mean, we don't know what's coming. We don't know what Apocalypse entails and what's coming after Apocalypse.
Yeah,
because I very much doubt that Singer and Kinberg don't have plans for the present classic X-Men cast.
Yeah.
In some way. And I mean, it would be very interesting to have two concurrent franchises. That would be fascinating.
Man, if only Vaughn came back, then he could handle the First Class side and Singer could do X-Men 4 or role reversal or whatever. Like, it'd be interesting to see them doing it almost like they're doing the new Star Wars films.
Yeah.
Where it's like, it's technically the X-Men 4 would be kind of a spin-off, or the First Class films would be kind of spin-offs of that or whatever. But yeah, it's just kind of a fun thing to think about, because this movie was it opened up all the possibilities.
It did, and it didn't really leave you wondering. Like, and Kinberg talked about how X3 was pretty much kind of erased, which is when Xavier sees X-Men 3, essentially, in Wolverine's mind.
We talked about him doing a movie review podcast.
Just cursing up a storm. And when he sees that, he now knows to essentially
divert the path.
Yeah. So Jean never becomes the Phoenix. But of course that also changes X-Men 2. And I have mixed feelings, and they're not of A, the ending of X-Men 2 being changed, but B, the Phoenix storyline being removed and gutted, because you can't redo that. No. Unless they plan to somehow, but I don't think it's really possible.
They completely go balls out with that and just do the Shi'ar stuff and everything in the cosmos, and Cyclops' dad comes in.
The fucked up thing is, I don't doubt that now. I used to think Singer was afraid of...
Oh, I told you earlier, I wasn't joking when I said I fully expect Magneto to have Genosha in the next movie.
Asteroid M and his acolytes. Or just something like...
Asteroid M, I think, is going a little too far. Just because...
We're getting Apocalypse, man.
Fair enough. By the way, we already got Apocalypse. The last scene of this movie.
Oh, yeah. Fucking young Apocalypse in ancient Egypt. This 4 horsemen creating the goddamn pyramids.
While people chant In Sabanur.
That was surreal as an X-Men fan. Like, I'm watching ancient Egyptians chant En Sabanur as a young teenage Apocalypse creates the fucking pyramids. Wow.
And 4 horsemen over there.
Like,
which I didn't even catch the first time I watched it. I had to go back and watch another source.
And it was just like, we're gonna go places now, aren't we? Like, I'm fascinated by what... Cause I used to think, like, okay, Apocalypse never gonna happen. You can't do him in live action, and they'll never make him look like Apocalypse. Now I have no idea. They may just make him look like Apocalypse. He might have a giant A belt.
We got the Sentinels, which I never thought would happen.
We did. I wish there was more Sentinel action, but what can you do? There wasn't enough X-Men in the past to fight Sentinels, so we got future Sentinels who just look like Nimrod, which is pretty awesome.
Yeah.
With fucking...
I remember when we first saw the future Sentinels, they looked so stupid, honestly, because we just saw, like, brief glimpses of them. Once you see the movie, it makes total sense because they're based off of Mystique's DNA.
Yeah, and I love the future Sentinels' powers. Like, we saw Emma Frost's diamond skin from them at one point. Did you see the fucking one that popped out the Lady Deathstrike claws?
No.
Yeah, one popped out Lady Deathstrike claws. I couldn't... It's like, what the fuck? Like, that whole Sentinel attack in the third act in the future. You know,
and Magneto taking apart that ship.
Fucking future Magneto's, like, last hurrah.
Yeah.
And getting help from Storm, who supercharges it with lightning. Once again, the most comic booky shit ever. And then Blink's last stand. Like, everybody else dies, Blink is the last one defending with her awesome powers, and it takes 4 Sentinels all impaling her at the same time to take her down. I fucking loved that.
She was the single most powerful member of that team. Like, there was no limit to what she could do. Like,
her power is so fucking cool, too.
Yeah.
I never knew live-action Blink could be so cool. Comic book Blink's not that cool.
No.
And just to see Iceman gets taken down off screen, but the Lady Blink takes down like 3 Sentinels by herself. It was just kind of awesome.
And we still get the ice slide.
Fucking seeing the ice slide with him fully iced up, which we got for we never even got the ice slide in X-Men 3, we just got him iced up.
And it was kind of a weird iced up, too. It was a weird effect. This one, he actually looks like he's made of ice.
Yeah, it's pretty cool. I can't believe they did. And like he was just going through a hallway using the ice slide. Like fucking Iceman would do in the comics.
And it looked halfway practical, too.
It did. And they finally made, Iceman's powers look pretty good with how he throws ice and everything.
Yeah.
They always had a hard time with that in the other movies, but seeing stuff like
bearded Iceman, too.
Bearded post-apocalyptic Iceman. It was just... Seeing all that future stuff, the Sentinels and the attack and the brutality, fucking Colossus being pulled in half. And then even just seeing the future Sentinels adapt to their powers and use Sunspot's power. Like, it was cool, the one fighting Sunspot transferred Sunspot's power to the one fighting Iceman, and the one fighting Iceman transport his powers to the one fighting Sunspot.
And that's when they're obliterated.
Jesus Christ, it's like... I love how Bishop was still a time traveler in some way.
Bishop with his giant gun. Just the fact... like, you and I were talking about this as I was walking home from the movie. Even very little Bishop is still Bishop in a movie.
The thing no one thought would ever happen. Motherfucking Bishop. And one thing I was cool that I noticed was kind of the background storytelling. They were using kind of these ancillary mutants you saw in other ways. Like the one you see kind of scavenging for stuff in the future in a very Terminator-like fashion with all the skulls. Also, I really liked that part where the kid finds the X under the dirt.
Yeah.
Because it was such once again, it was such a comic booky thing. Like the X-Men are such a symbol. To find, that would be something that would happen in a post-apocalyptic X-Men comic where, the an X logo would be found underneath something and it would be some kind of beacon of hope. And it was just cool to see that. But then you see that kid again who got obliterated by the Sentinels, in the school at the very end when Wolverine wakes up. And then there is the mutant with the tattoo on his face you see in the concentration camps in the beginning.
Yeah.
Who then you see in the past as well in Vietnam and stuff.
With past Toad.
Fucking past, with Fry Cook past Toad with his goggles. Who would hire that dude to cook food?
It was the 70s, man. They didn't have a lot of health inspectors.
I want to know how Toad turned into Ray Park.
You know what? I don't mind that because I want them to go back and digitally make Ray Park look like that.
Toad in this movie was awesome. He didn't do anything, but
he was awesome.
He's just somehow awesome. And
Havoc, I'm surprised Havoc lived through the movie. He was there for one scene, but he survived.
Yeah, it was cool to get cameo Havoc.
Yeah.
You know, just to fill in some backstory. I guess Banshee probably died in Vietnam or something. I guess they were all taken for experimentation by Trask.
Yeah.
That was fucked up.
We should probably talk about that. Azazel.
The saddest thing I've ever seen in cinema.
The tragedy of Azazel.
Like, the fucking autopsy photo of Azazel. Ugh.
And Mystique just being horrified. And us knowing why.
How will she ever have his babies? Or did she? Dun, dun, dun. But seeing,
Well,
like,
good news.
like, that's what happened to the First Class cast. They got gutted by Bolivar Trask.
The only version of Banshee I've ever liked.
God. Poor Emma's boobs. And even, like, Magneto, the plane scene between Magneto and Xavier, where they reference the fact they were all, you know, dissected by Trask. And then Magneto turns around, you know, Xavier's bitching on him with that information.
All taking down a plane.
All butchered. It was just, that was amazing. Fassbender and McAvoy especially. He was amazing in this movie.
Their chemistry together, too, it just didn't change. It was amazing in the First Class movie. It was taken to an extreme in this one because they've now made the leap to bitter enemies.
And the depths that McAvoy went to in this role.
Oh, he was like a drug addict.
Yeah, but, you know, it's like you never see such depth to an actor's performance in a comic book movie that often.
No.
And McAvoy just played it like he was just in a normal drama. Like, some of those scenes are just heartbreaking. Especially
when he actually meets his future self. And he's just playing with he's spinning so many different plates. Like, he's shocked and horrified, but at the same time he's curious and really excited, and he's distraught and just lost, and it's just, you see it all on his face.
And, you know, the drug addict stuff, which I didn't know they would go. I got the subtext of it when they first explained the power dampering thing.
Yeah.
I didn't know they'd be so blatant with it.
Well, there's flat out a shot of him just shooting up and then looking at a picture of Raven.
Yeah. Unfortunately, they included that flashback to that weird scene in First Class.
Yeah.
I wish they just kept the audio from that. That's mainly because the Mystique makeup, the Kid Mystique makeup is so
weird.
Yeah. But even Hank being like, I just take enough to get by. That was fucked up. I was sad that Hank didn't have a finish to it. He didn't really have a big arc and a finish to it. But I guess maybe they're saving that for Apocalypse, though, going for the long haul. Because I want to see him finally just accept being Beast.
Yeah. I want to see him be more scientific.
Yeah, more scientist Hank.
Like, just more raveling on and, just being... I want to see the seeds of Kelsey Grammer.
Definitely. We did get to see him invent TiVo.
Oh, and we get PBS.
I like how he really wanted to keep stressing that. 3 channels and PBS.
Man, there's so much to love in this movie, if you're an X-Men fan.
Just talk about Trask himself.
Yeah, the man who thinks he is Jesus.
I could not, as soon as I saw that painting of in Trask's office, when Mystique walks in, that he has the vault behind, with the fucking halo around him, was like, I understand this character completely now. His motivation. Like everything he says after I saw that had like such a new light, so it's like he thinks he's a messiah to mankind. And there's not like a ton to Trask in the movie. Like, you don't really spend a lot of time with him.
Yeah, he's kind of like with Wolverine. He's kind of more of a MacGuffin.
Yeah.
But the way that Dinklage gets to play it in a couple scenes, especially that scene where he's examining Mystique's DNA and he just kind of explains himself, and he just you see the light in his eyes, the demented light.
Yeah, how he admires them because he can bring everyone together. He admires mutants, and it's because it's almost like a Lex Luthor kind of complex, where he just sees himself as the savior to mankind using these things. And it's so warped and wonderful, and he works plain as just a plain villain, but if you just notice that painting, it just paints everything else in a new light. And every speech he makes and his mission, The dude just thinks he's Jesus.
And Dinklage is just he's just such a. All the actors in this movie are great actors, but Dinklage is on a level like with McAvoy, I think, with McAvoy and Fassbender.
Like Dinklage doesn't have a lot to work with, but just does so much. Even the scene he gets to play Mystique, crying Dinklage.
Weeping for Azazel.
She had his baby.
But, the acting in this movie, beyond those three, I can't think of anyone who did a bad job. Like, everyone was on their A game.
Oh, yeah. Jennifer Lawrence was amazing, of course. It was awesome to see Mystique pretty much kind of be Mystique.
Yeah. And more Mystique even than she was in the earlier films. Like, yeah, she was a cold-hearted assassin in the first few films, but she didn't talk.
Yeah, she didn't ever say anything. So
you kind of lost a lot of her character, whereas she gets to talk and be that in this movie.
Yeah, I felt like, I mean, yeah, she isn't like full-on comic book Mystique, but I could feel like that in there.
Yeah.
Like, she was Mystique. Like, she was on a mission by herself and doing stuff for the good of mankind. And she disagreed with Magneto's, methods, you could say.
Yeah. Which is always kind of the line she's kind of straddled. And future, I mean, of course, all the future cast basically own their roles because they were basically putting on an old hat. Yeah.
And, of course, Ellen Page was actually somehow able to do a lot with just sitting and looking pained a lot.
Yeah.
Especially after Rogue got taken out, so she just had to sit there and sweat because she lost a lot of blood, but that stopped being talked about at a certain point.
I think, though, my favorite of really most of the cast, except for maybe McAvoy and Fassbender and Jackman, Patrick Stewart back as Professor X, just being Professor X.
So great. Just
like he just gets
throwing out exposition like it's nothing.
Yeah. just being that scene where Magneto is dying and he just puts a hand to him. It's just it speaks so many volumes.
God, those two are just so good together.
Yeah.
Like Magneto and Xavier's relationship has always been the backbone of the X-Men movies, and to kind of see it get a send-off there, while also being expanded in new, interesting ways in the past was...
You see the beginning and the ending of it, and it's co-aligning.
It's fucking brilliant. Like, the script is so well plotted and written, and yeah, there's, like, info dumps, and I do feel like they too often repeat, like, I'm from the future, and they kind of did the same kind of, like, dramatic thing, you sent me back too, like, a little bit too many times, like, with Magneto, like, having Wolverine re-explain it to him and stuff like that. I think they were overcompensating with the exposition in those ways, but...
Well, audiences are slow.
That is true. But, it's a lot of information to get by. But, goddamn, it's just so... It's like that opening scene with the Sentinels attacking the X-Men. You're getting the power set up of the new X-Men. Seeing them. You're being reacquainted with the X-Men. You're seeing the capabilities of the Sentinels. Plus, at the same time, you're pretty much getting told how time travel works in this universe and how things are then reset. All in this one action sequence, and all blends together. You don't even know you're being told information. And then it's like, in a way, it's so wonderfully plotted.
Yeah.
It's kind of unbelievable.
And I do think we would be remiss if we didn't at least acknowledge Quicksilver.
Oh, yeah, we got to talk about Quicksilver. The thing we all made fun of.
Yeah, the thing that I was convinced was going to be the thing no one was going to talk about because he just looks so stupid.
As it turns out, we're all just fucking retarded.
Yeah. Not only does he look perfectly fine in the movie, somehow.
You realize, like, oh yeah, he looks like that because he's a kid. And he's dressed like a kid in the 70s.
And he's overcompensating because he plays video games and he steals a lot of stuff, and he looks like a kid thief from the 70s.
Yeah.
And then pair that up with the kitchen scene, which I swear got more laughs out of a theater than I have ever heard.
When the music kicks in.
It's like the pacing of it. Literally, the pacing of it. That may be the single greatest use of super speed in any medium other than comics I've ever seen.
I have to say, it's Avengers 2 has a lot to live up to as far as a good Quicksilver set piece.
And that is something we did not expect to think.
No, I'm bummed Quicksilver didn't stick around. I know he's going to be in Apocalypse, but
And
especially
I like
because how good Evan Peters was, too.
I also like the fact that he's a kid, but he's also insane.
He's just...
Like, he goes on weird tangents, and, like, he's talking to himself, and, like, you have these little shades of just, this dude is like a psychopath.
He's just like, they really played up the fact that his mind's just going too goddamn fast. So he's just all over the place, and he's kind of quirky and weird. And yet, he's still Magneto's son.
Yeah, I know, and they don't, like, hammer it in either. It's just like, oh, my father knew a guy like that once, and that's it. That's all. It's there. Kinberg just said, it's just there for the fans. The fans know what it means. Let's just leave it at that.
Until the sequel.
And then Fassbender just says, yeah, he's my son, in every interview he has.
I think Kinberg has said that they're going to explore some of that stuff more in Apocalypse.
Yeah.
But even if they left it at that, I'd be happy. I honestly didn't think that they would keep Magneto being Quicksilver's father.
I figured they would, but something about it always seemed like it would be a hackneyed job. The way they did it was perfect.
Kind of like how, I mean, it was cut out of X-Men 2, but Mystique is still technically Nightcrawler's mother.
Yeah.
But it's just not really referenced, and the one reference to it was pretty much cut out, and it was just double take.
Really, watching it now, it's like the only real acknowledgement of it is they stand beside one another in one scene.
Yeah. Which, there's so many layers to that one scene, if you actually know that fact.
Yeah.
But, yeah, fucking Quicksilver.
Yeah, Quicksilver, I mean, it just, the way they use the super speed, his performance, everything they did with, like, the high-speed camera.
Yeah, the Phantom they used.
Like, the music, like, everything just came together.
The effects in that scene were just flawless, and just being able to... That was amazing. Like, no version of super speed I think will ever live up to that one scene.
Him just casually stopping to put the bullets, or redirect the bullets out of the harm's way, knocking over the hat. Like, he's Quicksilver. He's just being a dick.
So they captured that.
Yeah. And yet it works even more in this because he's just a kid. It makes so much sense.
Yeah.
Rather than being this weird adult that goes around being a dick.
And it was, it was just fun. Like, as dark as this movie gets with the hardcore, the deaths, the hardcore Holocaust imagery, the seriousness of the story, the character drama, it's still so light at the same time.
Yeah.
Like, a tone a lot of other movies don't understand.
Man of Steel.
I mean, I wasn't going to say it.
Yeah.
We were all thinking it, but I wasn't going to say it.
Yeah. Yeah.
I was going to put in a Superman theme underneath what I was. It's your quick. But yeah, we should talk about. I just want to mention this, but the implications that JFK is a mutant.
Okay, you were fascinated by that too.
Yeah, it's like because they say it's like, why isn't this silly? Why is this such like almost a Shakespearean moment? It's so serious and heartfelt. But you're saying John F. Kennedy was a mutant. The crowd should be erupting at laughter and like laughing at the movie, not with the movie, but you just buy it. I don't know why. It's like the pathos that Fassbender gives it.
I think it's just also the fact that this is such an established franchise now that it's built a universe. So now you can just go back and say, oh, such and such was a mutant.
Magneto tried to save his life. Now I'm imagining, like, fucking, he used Emma Frost to seduce JFK at one point. Like, I'm imagining so much that's going on in the background, in the history of this.
You're imagining, like, a whole alternate movie.
Yeah, it's like, when you see JFK in First Class now, it's like, he's a mutant.
Like, what were his powers?
Pheromones?
Too easy.
Yeah, I guess so.
I bet he had, like, he could control electrical sockets or something.
Just electrical sockets. That's
Not
all.
electricity.
No other forms of electricity, just sockets. And just American ones, too. Nothing else from any other country, just American.
It would be amazing if he had just America-specific powers.
That'd be fucking awesome.
He can control all the apple pies.
Can make apple pies out of nothing. Oh, God, he's American Jesus.
I want to see mutant JFK now.
God.
I want to see them, like, they go back even before the First Class, and the original X-Men were JFK.
Same, they didn't reveal Nixon was a mutant. Nixon with his dogs.
That was amazing, by the way. The fact that we now have 2 comic book movies where Nixon is a primary figure, and they both take place roughly around the same period. They're both period pieces.
And they somehow did make Nixon cartoony. Got serious Nixon.
With that nose.
His dogs.
And Boulevard Trask interacting with Richard Nixon. And just immediately being in the White House.
Magneto talking to Richard Nixon. Giving a villain speech revealing mutants to mankind. Magneto controlling the Sentinels was incredible.
That shot from the trailer where he goes down to the stadium with them in tow, I figured there was a completely different context running through my head when I saw that the first time.
Yeah, I thought they were, like, fighting the Sentinels.
Yeah. I figured, like, he had just beaten them or something. Instead, no. It was even more supervillainy than that, and it completely works. Like, between this and Winter Soldier, like, it seems like the trajectory of comic book movies is slowly going back into the more over-the-top elements and making it work.
Yeah, it's like
making it work under, like, a conspiracy-esque plot line somehow. Like, maybe that's the key to it, is that it just has to have a through line of real-world implications.
Yeah, real-world, like, seriousness.
Yeah.
And it's funny when you try to just take out the over-the-top stuff, sometimes that makes it not work. It's where sometimes you have to embrace the silliness, I guess. And I didn't find Magneto flying around with a stadium and controlling giant robots silly at all in the context of the movie.
Yeah, it's just like with the scene in Winter Soldier where you have a giant head of Arnim Zola on a computer screen.
With a German accent.
And then he shoots a nuke at Captain America. Like, just all this stuff that shouldn't work is working. That's what the message is of this summer. Like, you have Godzilla fighting two giant monsters in the middle of a city. You have all this stuff that shouldn't working.
I think the key is just be sincere.
Yeah.
It's like, just be sincere. So Magneto can show up in a supervillain costume that's bright purple.
Yeah.
With a cape and a helmet.
And when you're not sincere, you're too afraid to have Superman not kill Zod. Like, it's just, I think we really nailed it in where comic book movies kind of fail.
Yeah, it's just sincerity.
Yeah.
That's what it all comes down to, just sincerity. And Days of Future Past is sincere in everything. When it's being humorous, it's sincere.
It had to be Singer. Like,
definitely.
Singer started it, and now he's, like, you can tell he's gained such a reverence for it that this was the only way the movie could be made.
And, once again, this is the only X-Men movie with, like, a big budget. I mean, yeah, the other ones had big budgets, and X-Men 3 had a pretty big budget but still felt,
First Class had a laughable budget.
First Class, yeah, did not have a huge budget. That's why, I mean, yeah.
And the schedule for that movie, too. I still can't believe that movie ended up being as good as it was. That's
why you had CGI mouth Beast. Thankfully, they redesigned that. Seeing Beast hang off a chandelier upside down was still amazing. So Singer was able to, just for the first time ever, go crazy sci-fi. But I didn't expect him to go crazy comic book at the same time. But then he still keeps the character stuff. And so well and so concise that you can tell everybody working on that movie believes in everything that's going on in that movie. There's no feeling of this is silly. This is just what it is. And once again, it goes back to just it being everyone is just sincere. So, when you're going through Wolverine's consciousness forward in time and then meeting your older self as played by Sir Patrick Stewart. It's like, it's a silly idea, but...
And McAvoy plays it like an Oscar performance.
Yeah, and it's just so... You're in the moment so much. And it's one of the best scenes I've probably ever seen in a comic book movie, and it's just two people talking in close-up.
And that's the crux. I've never seen a moment in a comic book movie mark the end of an act and the beginning of the next one so clearly. Yeah,
it's like that was... And, it didn't come too fast and come too late. It was just...
It was perfect. It was just right.
The movie's just plotted so well. It's just so impressive what they were able to do.
Yeah.
On such a complicated, X-Men story. And, make the big moment, the crux of the movie is having the villain not die. The movie makes you, the audience, not want Mystique to kill the bad guy who you've seen do horrible things.
Yeah. And kill Azazel, which is just unforgivable.
Matt, your sexy ass on over here. Check out Pulp Commentary Friday 13th. And hands down, at least in my opinion, the best X-Men movie. And definitely one of the top comic book movies ever made. I don't know if there's even a way you can argue against it not being one of the best comic book movies ever made.
I honestly, I'm still debating in my head whether or not I liked this or Winter Soldier more, and if that's the competition you have, this was a good year for comic book movies.
Yeah.
Especially compared to, 2012, where it was we got Avengers, then Amazing Spider-Man, then Dark Knight, God. And then last year with Man of Steel and...
Iron Man 3, Thor 2.
Them, yeah.
The trifecta.
But then we got this and Winter Soldier, and we're going to get Guardians of the Galaxy, and it's...
That's a trilogy I can get behind. And, bringing the X-Men movies up to the snuff of today's comic book movies. Because X-Men always still, even though it was a big franchise, even when you get to X-Men 3 and First Class, it still felt very small. It wasn't big like the Marvel movies or...
Yeah, anything. First Class was the first step towards that, and then this just kind of... This was definitely the Dark Knight to First Class's Batman Begins.
Definitely.
In so many ways. The parallels between those four films, I could go on and on about probably.
And before we get out of here, one thing I want to say, did you notice that there was no Marvel logo at the beginning?
I got one.
You got one? Did you get the flipping comic book pages logo?
I think, well, actually, now that I think, I may be thinking of X2, because, again, I watched it the same day. Because there was a Marvel Entertainment title card that came up, but not the production logo like that usually comes up. I thought that was very interesting. Very interesting. Well, I mean, Quicksilver,
Yeah, I think there's some interesting studio politics that's going on behind the scenes right now.
Well, if you believe the current rumors about the comics, it's there seems to be something a-brewing.
Yeah.
Not in a good way.
No, not at all. Not good for anybody.
No.
Who loses? Us.
Yeah, they're still better off than Sony.
Oh, Sony, you're doing stuff.
Not really.
Like a kid playing with Legos. You're just happy that they're not retarded. Well, at least he's putting stuff together in pieces, I guess. There's hope for him yet. Who am I kidding? No, there's no hope for them. Ghost Trooper's head in a jar. Anyway. I guess we've said... We've just, let's face it, came all over X-Men Days of Future Past enough. Just bukkakied all over it.
Through time.
I cannot think of anything else. I can't think of anything else I had a problem with. And unless we started going scene by scene, I can't come up with anything else to compliment.
I think this is honestly one of those movies where it's I have no interest in talking about the flaws because I loved going to the movies for this.
Yeah, it just made me happy, It's like the last time I saw a movie that if it just started playing right there, I wouldn't have left my seat. If it just started replaying right afterwards. The last time that happened was The Dark Knight.
Yeah.
I've seen a lot of movies that I loved since then, but if after that apocalypse scene ended, if that movie just, the opening credits just started playing, I was like, all right, I'll watch this again.
Oh, I want to see it again. I've seen people see it 5 or 6 times, and I am incredibly jealous of those people.
It's incredible. Just like, and just even like just as a fan of the X-Men movies, seeing all the little references they put in there. I love how the joke of Wolverine always going through a metal detector actually had a payoff, so he was surprised when nothing happened. It was just like there's so much going on, and like to love it as an X-Men movie fan, but then to really love it as an X-Men comic book fan. I just feel like that feeling of reading comics, of the X-Men comics when you were a kid, when the X-Men would be out and back, you know, playing baseball or something. Like that's the vibe that I got from that ending scene. Was like they're having their school stuff, then they go on fucking X-Men superhero missions, and then they.
It was the Chris Claremont era of X-Men come to life.
Yeah, it was just, it made me so happy as an X-Men fan.
It really just kind of set the standard for how to take a specific comic book arc and really kind of do more with it, even, I think. Because it takes the very basic threads of Days of Future Past, the comic, and turns it into that.
And this fits it into the continuity in the movie continuity in such a way that it adds to it, it fixes it. And I mean, we could do an entire episode based just around what it could do to the continuity. I mean, I think we only, like, just the top of the iceberg on that one. Yeah. Because there's so many possibilities where it could go, what's out of continuity, what's in continuity. And, you know, it doesn't affect if you love X-Men 3, it really doesn't affect your love of X-Men 3. All those movies.
It betters X-Men 3, in my opinion.
Yeah. And now, you know, they can pick and choose what they want to keep. I'm curious to see where this will land. This Mangold's Wolverine sequel, whether or not where this will take place in or whatever. And, you know, there's stuff that the movie doesn't explain that's not really necessary, like Wolverine's claws being adamantium in the future, which I actually heard that on set, some reporter or something asked him that, and he gave the Magneto answer, of course, like he had Magneto do it. But the other answer was Forge did it. Which I like how Singer uses Forge like we use Forge, which is Forge does something useful and then dies.
Well, I mean, to be fair, I think that's pretty much how everyone uses Forge, even the comic book writers.
Because fuck Forge. Mutant power to build shit well.
That was JFK.
He was gonna build a country, goddammit, with his mutant powers.
JFK as the X-Men movie universe's Forge.
Builds the Blackbird himself. God damn it.
And is killed because he's Forge.
We can't have Forge leading the goddamn country. He's Forge. Sorry, all you Forge fans out there. All one of you.
Good movie.
Great movie. Great movie. And I'm ecstatic for the X-Men franchise again. I was excited after First Class, but not like the level that I want to see Avengers 2, that kind of level. Like, I want to see Apocalypse. I want to see them get more money and then go even farther.
They have to do Apocalypse exactly like Apocalypse. Like, he has the giant armor.
He has the giant A belt.
He has the weird lip tattoo thing.
Hey, and he even kind of looks like Apocalypse does. He doesn't have the zany lips, but he's gray with blue lips. They're keeping that. I'm happy for the future.
The future past.
And this has been Box Office Pulp. I've been Mike.
I'm MB.
Now, MB, can you send me back into the past so I don't have to date that one girl?
All right, lie on the table.
Okay, do I have to take anything off, or just... That was a stupid question. I'm sorry. I'm about to slow down. You may want to tie me down. I do have adamantium claws. I told you to tie me down.
And like that, he's gone.